Good evening, everybody. My name is Mason Sims, and welcome to my show. You're in for a real treat this evening. I have a couple of guests lined up for us. The first one is Thomas Bates. He is a current state representative, and he serves areas of Pickens, Ringgold, and Anderson counties. And he's going to give us a little information what it's like to run for office and also what's currently going on right now in the state house. And also, we had Justin Alexander, who's the current city councilman for Ward 5 of the city of Easley. So he's just going to give us a brief recap on what you may have missed if you did not attend the last city council meeting, which was, last night. So, again, my name is Mason Sims, and let's get started. Here I have with me today is Thomas Beach. And Mr. Beach, I appreciate you joining us here today.
Thank you, Mr. Mason. It's really nice to see you and be here with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So I had a few questions for you here today. So a lot of us are still getting pretty familiar with the state legislature. So the main question I have, or first question I have, is what is the main job of the legislative branch?
Well, for reference, I would refer anybody and everybody to the Declaration of Independence. Why that is because it was a very unique philosophy that Thomas Jefferson was telling the King of England why we are becoming our own nation. And this philosophy says that the role of government is to protect these three inalienable rights: life, liberty, peace, and happiness. And so, as a representative, regardless of the level I am, is that whenever we look at policy, does this bill, this regulation, this law, does it protect your life, your liberty, pursuit of happiness? If it doesn't, it's a bad policy. And so when you look at all the various policy issues, such as taxation or pro-life or the Second Amendment or whatever it might be, you weigh, does this policy going to protect people's life, liberty, peace, and happiness, or is it going to take away those rights? And so my responsibility as a state representative is to serve the people. Just because we're called lawmakers, we don't just make laws. And if we do, I want to make sure that this law protects your three inalienable rights that God has given us.
Right. And also, another concern people have too is being able to contact their state representative. Would you say, or do you share like a personal contact phone number, or how do they usually reach, like through email?
Yes. So anybody can go to the State House website and look up their representative, and it will show my email, my phone numbers, and I get contacted every day, all day.
That's good. Yeah, I feel like the ones that have been able to stay in this business the longest, just a few off the top of my head, like Davey Hyde and Rex Stratus, I feel like the main thing that makes them stand out is they're approachable.
Yes. We are the employees of the people we serve. And so you want to, when your employer asks you to do something, you better get it done.
Right. And it seems like the longer they stay in there, sometimes people forget that.
Yeah.
So, and then another thing I was going to ask you too is what advice would you give somebody for campaigning if they were deciding to take that step to run for office?
Well, that's a great question. There's 5 questions you should ask yourself. The first question is the district winnable? If you're running for a seat in downtown Houston, Texas, which is really blue, and you're a Republican, that's probably not a good idea. So is the district winnable? The second question you should ask yourself is, do you have a good name in the district you're running? When I ran, no one knew who it was. We'll get in the weeds a little bit later, but having a good name helps. Can people trust you? Do you have friends that can help you? The third question is, do you have a fire in your belly? Now, what I mean by that is maybe you work for somebody. Will your employer let you have time to do this? Because running for office is a second full job. And then if you're married and you have kids, other kids are going to poke fun at your kids. Your kids ready for that? Is your wife ready for you not to be available? And so if your employer and your family check the boxes, then you're good to go. Another question you should ask is your opponent vulnerable? If Mother Teresa is your person you're going to challenge, no one's going to vote for you. They trust them. And then the last question is, do you have the 4 campaign resources available, which is people, you need people to help you open doors. When you go to your Sunday school class, hey guys, I'm going around for office, you can help me stuff envelopes or something. You need money. So you might not be able to write a check, but you need to be able to pick up the phone and ask your friends and say, hey, this is what I'm going to try to do. Please help me. Donate X amount of dollars. Another is talent, the resource of talent. So even if you don't know how to build a website, maybe you know somebody who can build a website for you. And the last resource is time. If time is the one resource you don't have enough of and you can never get back. So you want to make sure that you have time to run a campaign. Maybe the election's in June and you decide to run in March. That is a very, very small window. Good campaigns, I feel, take 16 to 18 months planning. I mean, not planning, but starting. And
I agree.
then when you announce, you hit the ground running.
Yes, it's amazing. Like the day you file, that's when you start. You jump both feet in the deep end, it seems like.
Yeah, boy, yeah. There's a lot of things happening in a campaign, but having a business plan, on paper, how many votes do I need? How much money am I going to spend? How am I going to spend it? What's happening on the calendar? Where am I going to be? And making a business plan. And you do that, 18, 16 months ahead. And when you formally announce, we've all probably worked with some volunteers once upon a time on another campaign. And you'll hear people say, well, I really like that person, but their campaign was so disorganized. Well, that's because we didn't have a business plan.
And I feel Alex Sayers said the same thing, said that he was a good campaigner, just not a great candidate, because he's retiree from, Manhattan.
Well, he's one of Pickens' most brilliant. Actually, I kind of wish he would run for the state house because I think that he would make a great statesman. I know he's done a lot of good work in Pickens.
Yes, he definitely knows the numbers too.
Numbers guy, very logical. He knows his man.
Oh yeah, if I ever were to debate him, I would definitely wish he was talking to me.
Yeah.
Especially since that's what we did for the living. I wouldn't want to challenge the numbers less than I slow.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe David Hyatt said this is his last term, so.
This is his last term. It certainly is. And, for those that might not know, is that I was not political before I became a legislator. I was a very dependable voter, very dependable conservative voter. But once I threw my hat in the ring and I won the election on January 7th of 2023, I get sworn in at the state house and I become the representative. And 2 hours after I became a representative, Chairman Davey Hyde kicked me out of the Republican caucus. And a month after that, I started receiving negative propaganda in my district that I get teachers and I get jobs. And so I had to deal with that for 2 years. I think the hardest thing about being a legislator is being a conservative. If you vote the way people expect you to vote, you're not going to make friends in Columbia. And so if, for anybody who's thinking about wanting to go to the state house, hope you have a backbone.
Definitely. When we went to the state convention, it was divided for the most part, especially with Drew McKissick. It was like a 60-40 win. I feel like people are wanting time to change.
Well, on that note, what I found is, okay, when I first ran, everybody would ask me about my SCGOP, what I thought about them. I didn't know who they were. Like I said, I didn't go to GOP meetings. I did not even know that there was a civil war at all. And everybody warned me about and every group warned me about the other group. And so it was a little surreal. But what I found is there are people that are labeled as Orion, but they're truly wonderful conservatives. Um, there's the chairwoman of the Pickens County Board of Education, Carla Kelly.
Right.
I remember being told, watch out for her, you can't trust her. She's anti, freedom. I think that's why the Bible says, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Because when I, heard all this, I'm like, oh, maybe well, it's not that great of concern. But you know who fought the woke left, who fought the the ACLU, who fought for kids? Okay. I mean, she is a wonderful patriot and conservative, and those people are running. And so what I go to my point is that, well, there's a division. If you take time to talk and you find out, well, you know what, we kind of agree on a whole lot. And so I know that there's a lot of drama and division, but I think let's look at the facts. How do we vote? You look at Carla Kelly's record on fighting the CRT, critical race theory. It's soft. If you look at my voting record, there's a reason why the CPAC has given me 100% conservative rating score. Right.
So, yeah, so I remember the ones you had people that said that they were saying 7% of Thomas Station. That's fine.
Yeah. I don't babysit everybody's voting record, but I'm very proud of mine. President Trump endorsed my re-election, and I was actually the first legislator to endorse President. But so, anyways, go to the facts. Like, I know, everybody likes to paint a good picture about themselves, but how did they vote on certain issues? And there's that's what matters.
And that's one concern. I know, like, the new people that don't like weapons, they vote a certain way they don't like, they're going to automatically call them right now and say they need to go. So I just wonder if that's going to happen.
Well, if what I have experienced is when you go to Colombia and there's a whole host of issues, but there is legislation like the hate crime bill, for example. If you were a minority, not a minority, if you were part of the LGBTQ and crime was done to you, the law can mean that your punishment's greater because the victim, was homosexual.
Right.
I believe in a country where we're all equal under the law. And so I think that all crime is a hate crime. And just because of your sexual preference doesn't mean, somebody should get punished more or less because. And so I voted against that. And a lot of Republicans voted for it. And so when you look at money being spent, every citizen wants the roads fixed, right?
Right.
All right. Would you like to redirect money to fix the roads, or would you like to spend money on gummy bear statues?
I would say the rest is probably more of the need.
But if you do that, you are now an obstructionist. You're a radical because you don't want to compromise.
Right.
And what I think we're at a point at is that if you're going to represent your families and your constituents, they don't want to work overtime because it's fun. They're working overtime because they have to make ends meet. The eggs and bread are much more expensive. Their mortgage is much more expensive. And our tax rates here in South Carolina are the highest in the Southeast. They're higher than Massachusetts and Rhode Island. our income tax. And so we are spending money that they've worked really hard on, homoerotic arts.
Right.
And we want to will give some relief to these families that are trying to make it. It's sad when children, the America that I grew up with, what are you going to be when you grow up? What school are you going to go to, right?
Right.
Now the conversation is like, well, you could always join the military. Nothing wrong with the military, but it's school's really a lot more expensive now, and it's becoming a less of an option for many people. Well, I would put my kid through sports, but we can't afford the amount of money spent it costs to play that sport. So, and so our families are getting close to a breaking point financially. We think of conservatives as we were going to fight the social issues, the heartbeat bills, the transgender movement, but let's fight for the family wallets too. And that's been one of my biggest fights is stop wasting people's money.
Right. I was always wondering too, like during the work sessions, if they had maybe like a 5 list of needs and like a 5 list of wants. Since I feel like the young statue is more of a want than a need.
Yeah, I don't know anybody who wants it except for a politician in Columbia. It is, like I said, the hardest part of being a legislator is because there's consequences for doing it. But I think what I've experienced is I'm not liked in Columbia. I'm very much hated, the special interest in the lobbyist and the leadership. But when I go home, people shake my hand and thank me for, the fight I had. And I remember one time my daughter and I were at Chick-fil-A having lunch, and the people in the restaurant came by and shook our hands. And I was like, I could use you guys every day because when I go to Columbia, I get pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, so it is good that you have the support of your constituents. That's what matters.
Yeah.
Not the ones that aren't looking after the best interests of our citizens.
Yeah. And I just made through a re-election, and I had a change. It was one-sided. So
We're on the post, right?
Yeah, it's for November.
Last week.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's nice.
Yeah, so I can focus on, just making sure we get hopefully the presidential election, goes our way, and then we can kind of finish what we started.
I have my priorities.
Right.
I think earmarks are terrible. I think the energy, we have an energy problem. It's going to be a crisis here soon. But the Anderson Independent sent me an email, and they were going to write a story. And I've always asked, what is your, Thomas, what is your priorities? But this was unique. What are the people of South Carolina priorities? Like, what are the people's priorities? And that was like the first time somebody asked me. And it shook me. Like, okay, well, they want the roads and bridges fixed. I hear that a lot. So that's a priority. And then I struggled for two other points. Like, what else do they want? Well, I know that they need more. So we need to stop spending their money. So that's another priority. And I have to think, what is another priority for the people? And I'm still trying to find it. But I think it's not a priority, but it's important. Food production. So what I learned is that we send a lot of our meat outside the state to be processed. And we import a lot of the food that we eat in South Carolina. And so I think we have a food security problem. I think we need to reevaluate food production in South Carolina. Because if things go south for whatever, natural causes, or DC is just so screwed up, country falls apart.
Right.
How are we going to put food on the table?
And is there a common argument that saves us money to import rather than have domestic products?
There's a bunch of factors, but I think that this coming 2 years, I will plan to, talk to a lot more farmers and figure out ways to have food security, and make sure that in case the worst happens, we're going to be all right. That would be just terrible. I want people to be able to, when they hit that light switch, it works.
Yeah.
I don't want to be like California or Venezuela, you know. And talking about energy, the federal government does not allow us to build new nuclear power plants. Doesn't allow us to have pipelines for oil. Doesn't allow us to get off the coast of South Carolina. And so we have more people moving into South Carolina, but how are we going to meet those needs? And so that's a real concern.
Yes. Well, Mr. Beach, I appreciate you joining us here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Here I have City Councilman Justin Alexander for Ward 5 in Easley. Justin, thank you so much for coming out today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I know that there was a city council meeting last night. Would you mind just kind of giving a brief recap for those who may have missed it last night?
Sure. So we ended up taking 3 votes. So the council voted to approve the purchase of a new fire truck. This fire truck has the capacity, I believe it will be our second fire truck. It will have the capacity to go to 3-story buildings. It's going to cost, I believe, $2-something million. There's such a backlog on these trucks. It takes about 4 years to actually get it from our purchase order. And so, because we're in a situation where we've raised taxes for the last 5 years in a row now, I didn't think it prudent to purchase a new truck. So I ended up voting against it, but it ended up passing, I think 6-1. We voted to raise the deductible on some of our insurance policies, like our auto accident policies, I believe, and several other policies, just a little bit, from like a $0 deductible to $1,000 or $5,000. And that's projected to save us about $40,000 a year. And so that was a really great find by our finance director, Ralph Herndon. He's been with us for about 9 months, I want to say, and he has done just an excellent job. And then finally, we voted to change the way that we vote. So right now, the rules actually say that we're supposed to be voting by roll call. We've always been voting by show of hands, and then they just record who voted. This changes our procedure to align with what we're doing now, so that we vote by show of hands. And I made an amendment that passed that just clarified that the record still had to reflect what council person voted now. Just so that we have that accountability there. I don't think the intent was to take that out, but it was a little bit ambiguous as originally written. So I just wanted to clarify that there.
Right. So they say, like, Councilman Alexander, then you would say, like, yes or no. Then rather than
Yeah, that's the way the rule currently is. But someone realized we've been voting just by show of hands, and that's worked completely well. I mean, there's 7 of us, and so we're changing the rule to align to our current practice, but it's going to continue. The record will reflect how each member voted.
Okay. That makes sense. Another thing I've a lot of us noticed too at the meetings, when the new leadership took over and there were several seats flipped, we thought there was going to be, I guess, sort of like unification, if you will. So is there a reason, I guess, why it's kind of divided now? As I noticed that for the most part, the last few meetings I've been to, it's been like 3-3.
I wouldn't say that it's really divided. I mean, we came in with different, several of the new council people, did have, had dissatisfaction with some of the things with the prior administration. We all have different priorities. I'm definitely fiscal conservative, and so I end up voting against a lot of the measures. But honestly, the council is working well together. I can't speak to the prior council, but at least this one, I mean, I've got a good working relationship with with Tom, with Denise, with Jim, with literally everybody. And the mayor and I have a good working relationship. We differ on some things. We end up voting differently, but it's a lot. It's probably a lot different than some people might believe. Good relationship.
Yeah, so I just remember prior to new leadership, it did kind of get heated in there.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
so, yeah.
last night, I tell you, when the citizens were speaking, there was not one person had a complaint. Every person that spoke was just full of praise for ECU, our combined utilities, for our police and first responders, and for the local churches, and how they all just stepped up. And there was one gentleman that spoke and said within a couple hours of the hurricane coming through that the police had done a wellness check on him and his wife, and that they had lived in Asheville for 27 years, that no one had ever checked on them. And so last night was just it was good. It was good to see how much people love Easley and appreciate Easley. I think especially our public works, our stormwater people have just done an excellent job in this. One thing that the public works asked us was be patient, because with some of the debris cleanup, the county's limiting them to 5 truckloads a day of limbs. And so that gets filled up really quick. The DOT is hiring some contractors to come in. They'll be picking up limbs, but they've got to be 6 foot or less. But that should be, if that's not happening already, that should be rolling quite soon. We also there's going to be not a public hearing, but essentially like a public meeting on the new zoning regulations for people to look at them, to express their input, and that had to be rescheduled. That's going to be rescheduled because of the storm.
Right. Yeah, that was one question I was going to ask you, was the debris. There is the light is really just countywide, so I was curious. I'm sure a lot of us were too, where they were in the process. But
Yeah.
so they said they've hired independent contractors to help haul the debris.
Yeah, the DOT has hired contractors that are supposed to be coming in. They were working through, I think, Oconee County, last I heard. They'll be in Pickens soon. They'll be in Pickens County soon. The city of Easley is doing everything that they can, but they're limited by the county landfill. And so the city actually took a lot of debris and put it on city land just to try to get some of it moving, but you can only do so much of that. And so I'm really appreciative of, all their work and what they've been doing, because they worked flat out.
Oh yeah. Then the combined utilities total have like 13, 14 people, like as far as like linemen, or as far as like getting the power back on.
I'm not sure of the numbers, but I know we got it back a lot quicker than a lot of people.
Yeah, I remember seeing their updates on their Facebook page, and they were communicating quite frequently. So yeah, they were wasting any time once the power went out. Yeah. And another thing I was going to mention too is the changing of form of government. Is that something that might be spoken about in future work sessions, or will that be addressed again?
It's possible that it'll come up again. My sense is that there's not a lot of enthusiasm for it on the council. I was never really a strong proponent for or against it. I kind of like the current system because it's kind of like the federal system, in that you have a tension there between, the mayor and the council. And I don't mean like an interpersonal tension, but you've got, like an executive, almost like an executive and a legislative. It's not quite that way, but, I like the current system. I think it's working well. And I think the last election did show it's pretty, if there is a significant problem in the city, you can flip those seats, and you can flip them pretty quickly. And so if there are problems, it seems like the ballot box is the best solution. I'm open to the idea of it, but I don't see a huge reason for it.
Right. And I actually did have a conversation with former Mayor of Pendleton, Randy Hayes. We had a conversation about it as well with the city of Pendleton. Had a mayor council form of government, but it seemed like they didn't want to enforce it. Like when once he got in, I don't think a lot of people. He actually told me a lot of people probably thought he wouldn't win, and he wanted to, enforce the idea of mayor council, and they seemed to ignore that, and they wanted the administrator or the council to have more power than he did. So it is good that at least easily they are abiding by that, and by enforcing the mayor council form of government.
Right. And we've got a wonderful city administrator, Tom Couch. He is a gentleman. He is, coming in. This is my first term. There were a lot of things I didn't know. I sit beside him in the work session, and he's been just a great resource.
Yeah. Is he the one that's the CPA that Elisa Talbert hired?
No, that's I don't believe so. He's the CPA would be Ralph Herndon, the one that found the insurance savings. I don't remember what Tom Couch is. I don't know if he has a master's in public administration. He has been just a very valuable resource.
Yeah. And is there anything else that you would like to mention to our constituents while we're on the air?
I will be holding a Ward 5 town hall soon. It will probably be in December. I would have liked to have held it earlier in the year, but as personal issues come up. But that's really it. We love your input. We don't get a ton of input. People can always email me, but
Right.
there are things that people are going to see or notice or have thoughts about that might never have occurred to me, and so always open to new perspectives, talking to people, and so and even people, absolutely, if you disagree with me, certainly tell me. I may be wrong.
Right. Yeah. And you don't seem like the type either. Like if you disagree with me, you're my enemy. I don't see that with you. Like some people feel an absolute.
I think a lot of times that comes from if someone doesn't know why they believe what they do. But if you got a good foundation of what you believe, then when you get challenged on it, you can reevaluate and either say, I hadn't thought about that. That makes sense. Or, no, I looked at that perspective, but thanks. And I think a lot of times political differences get blown up into, being as if it were some personal thing, when a lot of times it's just people doing their best in good faith and just come to a different conclusion.
Right. Yeah, I will say you need to make yourself available too. Like if I have a question for you, you're usually really quick to respond. I hear back with you in maybe an hour, 2 hours tops the same day.
Wow.
So, yeah, that can definitely be a common frustration with constituents is that they have a representative and they have a hard time reaching out to that person. So yeah, I definitely like the ones that sustain in this business and stay in there a long time, like Davey Hyatt and Rex Rice and Alex Seda. They never lose touch with their constituents.
Yes, I mean it is, especially Rex. I mean it is shocking to me how many times a year I see him at everything and how knowledgeable he is about things. I mean, that man is just a wealth of information. And of course, Alex is great.
Yeah. Well, Justin, I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to come on here. We'd love to have you come on here again.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure. Hope you have a wonderful evening.
Well, that concludes our show tonight. Thank you for joining us this evening, and if you hadn't already, feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel and also follow us on Facebook for weekly updates. If you missed us live tonight, that's okay, because we are going to have this posted later on this week, more than likely on Thursday or Friday. So again, thank you for watching, and good night, everybody.